Welcome to the Red Shirt Podcast with your hosts, Vernon and Nigel. The Red Shirt Podcast, by Reds, for Reds.
Hello and welcome to this week's Red Shirt Podcast with Vernon and Nigel. Coming up on this week's show, we'll be talking about Ole and his new 3-year contract. We're going to be talking about Rapael Varane and his transfer to Manchester United. The right back position, do we need to replace Aaron van Bissaka? We'll also be talking about this week's friendly with Brentford and all other transfer and gossip details. So, Nigel, how are you doing?
I'm not too bad. Who's that right back we're going to be discussing today?
Aaron van Bissaka. AWD to you, Nigel. And Nigel,
I'm great, mate. I'm doing really well. In summer holidays, so the kids are off, so we're having a staycation. We're all good here. How about you guys? How's everybody?
So, Nigel, we just need to introduce our guest, which he's making his red shirt debut. Is Lee Rogers, and Umesh. He's come back for another week. It was our great statistician who puts together all our good little videos. Are you okay, Umla? And you okay, Lee?
I am fine, thank you. I have played football for the first time in about a month today, so I might have to get some oxygen at some point. But other than that, I am doing absolutely fine, thanks. And thanks for having me back again.
Good. And Lee, Mr. Rogers, making his Red Shirt Podcast debut. How are you doing, Lee?
I'm cracking. Really good, sir. Looking forward to it and humbled to be invited. So cheers, guys.
Okay, well, the good thing about being on this show, especially as it's your first time, Lee, is that because obviously you have to look after your hosts, me and Nigel are going to take one of those framed shirts behind you.
Yeah.
So, Nigel, you enjoying the summer?
Loving it, man. Absolutely loving it. I mean, it's a staycation. It's different. We're having to adapt, but that, I guess that's when you can really have some fun. When things are different, you've got to respond to it, and sometimes the spontaneity is what makes it. So, yeah, man, having a good time.
Last week, United announced Ole Gunnar Solskjaer signed a new 3-year contract. Lee, do you think he deserves the contract, and are you looking forward to another 3 years with him?
Torn on this one, right? So I can't come on here and be a hypocrite and go, have I always been completely sold? I am delighted he's staying. I'm delighted that he's got 3 years. I think the bigger issue is about, will we be challenged for the league title? I think that's our number one priority over that next 3 years. And I don't just think it's on Ole, actually. So I really can see even this, and I know we'll go on to the transfer dealings, I'm really encouraged now what we're starting to do. And I think that's been the difference on the back room stuff. So getting transfers over the line, the calibre of players which we're going after, the deals being sensible, I think Ole's got everything in his locker to then get us closer and closer towards City and Liverpool in that 3-year period.
Umla, obviously, Lee's made a good point there. There's been obviously, some recent recruits in the backroom staff. Do you think he's starting to mould the job and shape the club and sign the players that he wants? Is this the culture of the club and the DNA that he wants going forward?
I think one thing that I do like about Ole staying is he recognises when he's not the person for the job. He knows he's not an Alex Ferguson. He knows he's not as good as a lot of people whose CVs out there are littered with trophies, let's just say. But similar to what Lee was saying, like, they're getting the backroom stuff right. One thing I really like is, and I'm not sure if you know this, but Paul McShane's come back to the club.
Under 23s.
Absolutely. And so he's almost like an on-pitch coach. So he played against Stalybridge Celtic a couple of nights ago, sat there in the centre half to coach the lads on the pitch. And I suppose it's that kind of thing that makes a huge difference. And I think if Ollie's beginning to sort of say, I recognise I'm not a defensive coach, I recognise there's parts of this job that I'm not good at. but I'll bring Paul McShane in. He knows what it's like to grow up as a United lad. He knows what it's like to forge a career, even if it's not with us. He's made a very good career out of football. And that's kind of what you want for our younger lads. Obviously, you want to see some talent coming through. But Eric Ramsey, another one, bringing Darren Fletcher back and his work alongside John Murtaugh, which I think is having an effect, because I think we're going into meetings now when people are going, well, hang on a second, Darren Fletcher's recognised player. He's known across all of football as being a top quality footballer and knows what he's talking about. So I'm glad that we've given him a contract. I personally think the club is moving in the right direction. I know people are going to turn around and say, is it silverware? And I agree with you. We do need to be challenging. But hopefully where Ollie is slightly different to managers who are going to come in and just take over and go, this is the way it's going to be. This is my style of football. This is my backroom stuff. I think he's doing a good job of going, all right, I need to work on set pieces. I'm not the man for the job. Let me bring someone who's got the CV and the know-how to do it. And I think he's building a team that can make sure that we're challenging. And I suppose he's kind of addressing the things that we all see on a week-by-week basis, or certainly saw over the last season.
Yeah, he makes some very good points there. Nigel.
That's okay. So those that have watched the show know that we've done this quite a few times, haven't we? So I guess it's funny. I saw an interesting stat this week, or an interesting comparison. So they looked at Klopp, who in his first season finished 8th, second season finished, I think, 5th or 4th. I can't remember where it was, and then third season finished there or thereabouts again. And Ollie, by comparison, is at 6th, 3rd, and 2nd. And then the caption said, "Just have patience, everyone." And so I guess, and I'm all for second chances. I'm all for clean slates. I'm all for it's a new year. And make no mistake, Ollie was an apprentice when he took this job. He didn't have the CV to get the job. The only thing that gave him the job was the fact that he was a United legend. So that's the fact. But that being said, he's done okay. And when you kind of look at stats like, 6th, 3rd, and 2nd, that you can't argue with that. I know there's many extenuating circumstances around that, what's happened. So maybe Ollie's one of these lucky managers that we hear about. So obviously I hear everything that Umesh says, and also what Lee says as well. I think this is the silverware is a must. So yeah, he's got his contract, and he signed his contract. And the cynics might say, well, if it doesn't work out for him, he's going to get a nice payoff, isn't he? And that's how we should be treating our legends. We don't just chuck him out like we do, like all the clubs do. But he's got to win something this year. So there's no more excuses. We're out of excuses. He's been backed. He's got the players that he wants. Like the club are seemingly getting themselves together and are beginning to operate like a world-class club should do. But he's got to win silverware. He's got to be brave in those games. I know he's got a Norwegian friend who's been talking about the fact that he's going to change the system. It's going to be more attacking, pretty much like it used to be when he first arrived. So we're all waiting to see all of this. And, we're getting some hints in some of these friendlies that we're watching. Silverware is a must. It's now or never, in it. It's now twist or bust. He's got to bring something home this year. So let's see.
I think this year's obviously a major year for him. I think if we'd have won the Europa League, then we would have come into this season absolutely buzzing. Players would have been buzzing. The additions to the squad would have been buzzing. I think it's quite interesting because I look at the two signings of Varane and Sancho, and I think that tells us where we're going. That two really, really good players have wanted to come to us. You can turn around and you can say, well, with both of them, there's only 2 or 3 clubs that they've gone to. But at the end of the day, they've chose United. And I think that shows you that within football, these players believe that we're going places. I think he's made the right decision. Lee, what do you think about the obviously addition of Ramsey, because he's come in as a set piece coach? it's quite interesting. I know Klopp at Liverpool has a throwing coach. What do you think of a set piece coach?
It's a bit like Umla said, actually, I think you referred to him as not being Fergie-esque, right? I'd take a different view in that I think he is in some ways, because Fergie was never, he knew his strengths and weaknesses. And I think you're starting to see a mature in Ollie where he's going, he knows what he's good at, but he's also appreciating the grandeur of the role and what he's not so good at. So getting the staff and the support and the structure right from a club perspective, United is a much bigger entity than any of us can really appreciate. I am absolutely convinced of that. Even Fergie, towards the end of his days, the number of support staff around him was incredible, right? And it wasn't always like that. So I think it's only inevitable, sports science, psychologists, nutritionists. Actually, if you look at American sport and American football, for example, they'll have defensive coaches, they'll have attacking or offensive coaches. I'm not surprised to see kind of an increase in layering in this type of thing. And I think we've been particularly poor actually at set plays over the last 2-3 years. And I think we've lost marginal gains in that space against our competitors. So anything we can do that kind of bridges that gap. And I just want to touch on the point that you said about, Sancho and Varane being very good players. I'd go one step further. I think they're outstanding players. Like Varane, for the price that they've paid, is exceptional talent. I don't see another centre back in Europe that you go getting someone in his prime like that, and then Sancho with his potential. Them two for me are outstanding and exactly what we need as well. So not just a brilliant player, a bit like Sanchez for me was a mistake in the past because he was a great player, but he then stifled Rashford and Martial's growth, in my opinion. So I think they are the characters that we need, backed up by the support staff. It's exciting times, and I go, and I'm a glass half full kind of guy, without a shadow of a doubt. That said, the competition, if you look at what City have done in the last 3-4 years, 5 years, it's a massive juggernaut. Let's make no mistake about it, boys. We have got leaps and bounds to go to. Same with Liverpool, to be honest. They get their players back that they had out last year. We have got a fight on our hands this year.
Yeah, I think makes some really good points there. And I want to take us into the direction of the signings. Obviously, we spoke
just before you do, Vernon. Can I jump in there, mate?
Of course you can.
Yeah, just a couple of points that you made there. I think the first thing I would say is, what's taken him so long to get to this point? You made some great points about the club structure, and that really needed addressing. What's your angle on why it's taken so long for us to get to this point? Because everything you've said, whilst very true, and I agree with you, isn't new information. It's not rocket science, isn't it? City did it 8 years ago. Liverpool did it 6 years ago. What took United so long to get here?
I think you're right. Actually, what you said, Nigel, in terms of when he started off this role, he was kind of the apprentice to a certain degree. And maybe at other places, Mulder, Cardiff, he could be a manager that looked after a first team. At United, to make sure that everything runs throughout the club, it's way bigger than that. And working in an organisation myself, now it takes time then to mould that. In the same way, it's taken Klopp a huge amount of time. Liverpool gave Klopp a 7-year contract from the get-go that said, you know what, we're going to back you 100%, and you roll out your way, your philosophy, your principles. We're still trying to unpick the 3 or 4 year successions of managers, and that's not an easy thing. And changing culture, as well as getting the structure right, to me are two critical things. I don't think it's been his lack of wanting to try and do it. I think he's now got he's been given the back in totality that says, right, we're going to back you in the transfer market, and we can see that they've got progress. And it's almost like you go to the next level on a game and you get a little bit more permission, a little bit more chips in the bucket that goes, right, we're now going to let you progress.
Yeah. And your second point you made your second point was the thing about, make no mistake, we've got leaps and bounds to go in terms of City and in terms of Liverpool. And I'm just wondering whether that's true or not, because we've demonstrated that consistently over the last 2 or 3 years that we can beat them. We beat City how many times? we've beaten Liverpool. Well, actually, we should have beaten Liverpool more than we did. So I think the issues around United has always been, like I said, the little detail in terms of how we defend properly, how we progress the ball properly, all those things that I think are Ollie's weaknesses, really.
But we struggled. Yeah. So just to answer that very point, then,
Yeah.
I think we've struggled, and I think it's well documented from pundits or whatever. This is not me as a tactician specialist, but we've really suffered against the low block, right? Because we've not been able to open teams up. And I think part of the Varane signing actually is critical to it, because I think it enables you to press up the pitch and compress the play a lot more. And then the type of player that Sancho is, that goes and beats a man, not just that he's fast and can hit someone on a break, because we know we've got the players that do that against the Cities, the Liverpools, the Arsenals, the Chelseas that will open up and come at you. It's actually the teams that historically we've done really well against, because it's been consistent, right? And we've been able to beat a man, we've been able to get to a byline, and we've been able to put the ball in the back of net. A bit like, City are not quite like that, but they dominate play, don't they? In the same way, Liverpool, when they won it, they dominated play, and it was just a wave and wave after attack. We've been like side to side, backwards, very safe, shots outside the box. And actually, I think we've got to dominate games, particularly against a low block, much more.
We got David Moyes after Alex Ferguson, who we backed and gave him a 6-year contract straight off the bat. He changed a culture that didn't need changing. Or if he did change a culture, he brought in a culture of, this is how I used to match mediocrity at Everton. So I'm going to take you as absolute winners. And there was stuff that the Raphael twins, the Silva twins, Raphael and Fabio, they were saying, said he came straight in and he was talking to us to do things and change things and be pragmatic. And we're thinking, you've not won anything. And as much as he was the chosen one, the worst thing that he could have done was get rid of all of the backroom staff. And then it's kind of the egos that we brought into the game. And Louis van Gaal is such a micromanager, and he's so autocratic in his style of management. It's like he wants to build a machine. And then we ended up going with Mourinho. And now, just to give you an idea, up until Mourinho said the words low block, we all knew that it was just Cole defending deep. But the minute those words came out of his mouth, all of a sudden people decided, no, Mourinho said it. That must be the new word. That must be what we're calling it. It's just defending deep. But it's his ego that comes along with it that we've bought into. And that's not the way our club runs, because Ferguson used to say there is no one person bigger than the club. Mourinho doesn't work in that way. So there's 2.5 years straight away where we're now dealing with his ego. I remember the pre-season that we had where most of the players had just finished a tournament. I think it was 2017. And basically he was in America, and every single interview, all he did was, this is not my team. What do you want me to do? Could have sat there and went, something, we've got an exciting group attack. We've got youngsters coming through. It's a great point of development. It gives me a chance to see who I can bring through. Instead, he sat there and he moaned. He spat his dummy out. So we bought into that premise. Now, that has to come from above. It's not the managers. And whether we're beginning to see the changes, Woodward stepping back out, John Murtaugh and Darren Fletcher coming in, who know football, not finance. I'm not going to argue with Ed Woodward's ability to get financial sponsorship. Yeah, I want a guy like that getting us sponsorship deals because he brings revenue into the club, regardless of whose pocket it ends up in. But we finally got people who know football dealing with footballing matters. And I think that's been a reason why it's taken so long. And I think Ollie's part of that. I think he brings back, and he says it all the time, it's the DNA of the club. For a short while, the DNA was ripped out of the club for people who didn't truly understand Manchester United. I mean, Louis van Gaal even said in one of his interviews, I have no idea why somebody who knows nothing about football is dealing with football. And he was talking about Ed Woodward. And he hit the nail on the head. And then shortly afterwards, he was shafted out of the club. And Mourinho came in. We can't work with egos like that, even if they are amazing managers. And even if we were to bring Pep in, Pep's an egomaniac, absolute egomaniac. And he, as much as all of us would have been like, brilliant, we've got one of the best managers going. It's one of those things. Would he have ripped the DNA out of the club? Maybe we needed a collection of people. And just to sort of hit on the leaps and bounds, I think you might be right. I think a lot of people were saying at the back end of the season, we only finished 4 points ahead of Liverpool, and they had a shocking season.
Exactly.
4 points is not enough of a gap. And I think it's going to be far more competitive. The fact that Thomas Tuchel's come in and we know that he can make a difference. He's just won the Champions League. If you know, it's we've got
this contract are not the Numesh. You sound like you don't want to give it him.
No, I do. I think we're going in the right direction. But to answer your question of why it's taken so long, that's kind of what I was going with.
Okay.
It's taken that long because we had all those egos in place.
I think for me, where we made the mistake from a cultural point of view is we had for the last 25 years, we had for over 25 years, the most attacking minded manager that English football had ever seen. You know, the most cavalier, the most brave. And then the three guys after were pragmatists, the most defensively minded managers that you could come across. I think, to be honest with you, I think at the moment, the way that I see it is, before we move on, is that the club's going in the right direction. They've reintroduced the culture. I think they recognise that Liverpool and City both have a culture of, Liverpool have a transfer committee where obviously they deal with Moneyball, and City brought in Barcelona's backroom staff of Sanarano and the others to make it a culturally comfortable for Pep so that he could do what he was going to do. I think Ollie wasn't happy with having a director of football because inevitably the director of football could take your job. And that's why he spread this around. The exciting transfer of Rafael Varane. We've just touched upon it. So I'm going to start with you, Nigel. How does this make you feel that we've got transfer business done so quickly and over the line this summer with one of the major targets, but one of the best defenders in Europe?
I mean, is it quick? I don't know if it's quick. You know, could it have been done quicker? But fair play, we've got him, and I'm
take into account COVID and quarantine rules.
Okay, yeah, exactly. We've got him, and I am absolutely delighted with it. And I've already stated that I think obviously this is now going to be very interesting or fascinating to see how Maguire copes with a world-class defender by his side. You know, there's no more scapegoats now. It's really about both players playing well and delivering those clean sheets, because we know one of them is world-class. And you know, and I like Maguire. He's had a good World Cup tournament. He's had a good European tournament. But let's see how he does. But fair play to United. You know, you can't argue with the fact that, you know, we've delivered two of the players that we all wanted.
So the transfer fee is 34 million initially, rising up to, with both add-ons and bonuses, 42 million.
The guy's in his prime. We've got a world-class defender in his prime for that. That's good business. I'm happy about that. So, well done, United. I'm not going to knock them when they've done something that I'm happy about. I'm genuinely excited about that. You know, can we deliver that third piece? That's what I'm interested to see, which is that midfielder that I think we need badly. But yeah, man, that's great news.
So, Lee, we're going to look at sort of like John Berto and Darren Fletcher and how influential they've been in this transfer fee. I mean, apparently they put on a presentation to Varane, which sold him the club. How important do you think it is to have two influential figures like that at the club?
Important, don't get me wrong. And I started this saying they've clearly made a difference because the proof is in the pudding, right? I agree with Nigel. I think the thing that frustrates me more than anything, just to get this off my chest, because it's been a bugbear of mine, is why do United transfers go through the absolute mill of every single stage? You know, I've seen Liverpool sign players and City sign players where you hardly know it's done, Even Kane's not been talked about that much from a City point of view, even though you kind of hear in the grapevine that it's a done and dusted. But every single element and every bit is reported from a United point of view. So I don't understand how we can't just get it over the line done. And in the old days, Fergie would be rolling someone out with a shirt in the hand. So we're talking about Varane as a sign and sealed player. That's every bit of the report that says that. Until he's in a press conference in a United shirt, as much as they've said a deal agreed, once that's over the line, that will be an amazing signing. Right? So that's the thing. Let's make no mistake about this. Varane is not joining Man United because of Darren Fletcher. Right?
I'm so glad you said that, mate. I'm going to dive in with that.
He is joining United because we will be paying him a very handsome contract by all. So whilst we say 42 million or 41 million, including add-ons as a transfer fee, I think we're in like the time when City weren't winning the league and had bundled the cash and were paying over the odds from a wage point of view. So we will be paying him double of what Real Madrid were paying him, is what I hear. So that's a huge incentive, as well as the historic element of the club, right?
It's a good point that you make there. But I think one of the reasons for the actual deal, because I mean he's well paid anyway. He is a very well paid player at Real, and Real were always open to the deal because they needed to bring money in, and he's one of the assets that saleable assets that they could get money for.
But but wouldn't you imagine though that if that was, and I don't disagree, right? But if that he should be, if he had another year on his contract, you'd be getting triple that for a fee, and we'd probably pay it because he's that good a player.
He's that good, but I think what you've got to take into consideration is the fact that he's about to go for free next year. So
that's what I mean.
Last year. Yeah,
but it's like because with Pogba though, isn't it? So if we let Pogba go for nothing next year because he does it to us twice, we're like we'd be in exactly the same boat. So why are we not getting him out of the door right now?
I think the thing is the major thing is, and I'm going to go back to the Varane deal, is first and foremost, he wanted to leave. Varane wanted to leave because basically he's been there for 10 years. He sees Real on the decline because they actually are on the decline at the moment. And I think he wants to be remembered for the 10 years that he was there when they won La Decima and all the best trophies, and not in a team that's declining. So for him, it's all about a new challenge. And I think the Premier League, because let's be honest, once Ronaldo left La Liga was on the decline, wasn't it? Because they were only left with Messi. So I think he's looking at coming to the Premier League and really seeing it as a challenge. But for his point of view, he was always up for the transfer from the start. And Real basically put together what it was going to cost them to give him a new contract would actually be, it's more financial benefit selling him now because they'd have to pay him more than that. And that was the feeling. Umla, how do you feel about the transfer?
I think when you start to think about Ben White going to Arsenal for 50 million quid, getting Rafael Varane for 10 million quid less than that, am I missing the point somewhere? It's fantastic signing. It's what we need. I mean, it's one of those where, I mean, when we got Maguire, he was thought of as one of the best defenders in the Premier League, but he was still, people always said there's still a few things to his game that needed to improve. I think we started to see little snippets of needing someone alongside him to bring him on and just sort of give us a more stable base. And maybe that's why we're starting to hear people say we're going to go more attack-minded. If him coming in, like you're saying, at 28, having played for Real Madrid, I think the thing is, he's a winner. He knows what it's like to win trophies. And there's not that many people within our squad who you can still say that about. And we're not just talking about sort of League Cups and things like that. We're talking about the Champions League. We're talking about big prestigious trophies, the World Cup. So any of that winning mentality that can rub off on any of our players can't be a bad shout for £40 million.
And when was the
I
last
think
time? And when was the last time we had it? We had it this way, where we had Rail players coming
Correct,
to United
correct.
in the comp.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
Yeah.
good point, Lee. Very good point.
absolutely. And even Sancho coming essentially via City through Dortmund from City. They've always, they've been our noisy neighbours, but let's face it, they've been far more successful than us over the last 7 years. So seeing players coming that way to us as well, I feel like the tide's turning a bit.
Yeah,
I think
something
the thing
different
is-
about this year, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the thing is that, for instance, with Mourinho, he was just signing players for the now, for the present, to get him through, whereas like, I think, Lee made a really good point before about the age of Sancho, that there's a guy that can be there for 10 years. The average age of the squad's gone down. And I think like Lee sort of like highlighted a really good point before about that. It's like a young, exciting team, isn't it? It's like this, cavalier young team. And I think it's interesting when we look at like the signings, because all of a sudden there seems to be a structure and a culture to the signings, don't they? So we've got Varane, we've got Sancho. Do we see ourselves getting anybody else? Do you see United signing anybody else, Lee?
I do. I still think we need, and it sounds daft to say it with the number of midfielders we've got, but I'd really love to see a dynamic centre midfielder. And even if the young lad at Rennes that they've talked about, the French lad, yeah, I'd be all up for that. I think it's as important though who they get out the door. So we often talk about the additions to the squad. I think there's a number of players now, and I think you only have to look at the friendlies, which we will talk about, that you go, actually there's a load of talent resource there that need to go and progress their careers. And I think Jesse Lingard, for me, whilst he's done brilliant at West Ham and he's looked sprightly in pre-season, I think he's one of those players. For him, as an individual, as a footballer, it's now right for him to go and flourish his career. Martial, same thing. So it'll depend on who we get rid of to who we can bring in, not just in this financial climate, who do we want to go and get? Because I don't think that's the reality of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's certain players that we all know that the club still work under a certain net spend. So I think they will look to recoup some of that money. Whether they go and spend it again, I don't know. I like Camavinga, as you're saying. I mean, I've only seen YouTube clips. I didn't watch any Rennes games last year, but if he's being spoken about at length, he's got something about him. I worry sometimes bringing in young potential from other countries. What does that mean for the likes of Dylan Levitt and James Garner, the young potential that we've got at the club? But that's not to say that they can't go out on loan and come back to us in the future and form part of a midfield that includes people like Camavinga. I think watching the sort of the pre-season game so far, it's been nice seeing Jesse Lingard there. I kind of feel like he's trying just that little bit too hard because he's trying to get himself back in the first team. And I love that attitude. Don't get me wrong. I do. But I think, Lee, you bang on there in terms of for him personally, as well as professionally, it might be time to move on. The same's going to be said with Pogba. Is it time for United to have life without Pogba? I mean, he's turned down £350,000 a week. I don't think it's about money. I don't think he's going to sit there and go, I need £500,000 a week. His performances simply can't command that kind of outlay. So I don't know what it is with him.
Sorry, Mesh. Don't you think it's the fact that he's still on 350, he's still getting paid less than De Gea? I actually think he's going to sign a contract. I think it's literally up it by 10 10 grand a week and he'll sign. I've just got a feeling that's what it's about. I think it's about bragging rights.
It's
but then
funny
De Gea's been a far more effective player than he has over
Doesn't
the
matter,
last
does
few
it?
years.
He's won a World Cup. He's won leagues everywhere. And I'm Paul Pogba. Why am I getting paid 10 grand less than this? This has-been keeper. I mean, I like De Gea, but I'm talking in terms of Pogba's reflection.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to give
some of me thinks it's this the same old mind games with Mino Raiola as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, sorry, Vern, I just think United aren't stupid. Why would they put a contract in front of him if they knew he was going? They must know that he goes, if the money's right, I'll stay. So so now United are being United and playing the game and put a contract in front of him. That still says his number 2. He's like, are you daft? I've just said, if the money's right, I'll stay. So otherwise, United wouldn't waste their time putting a contract in front of him. So I think...
it's a very interesting point that you make, because, I mean, like, when we talk about 300,000 and 400,000, I mean, when you think that Griezmann at Barcelona is getting paid 700 grand a week, I mean, 700 grand, I couldn't believe it when I heard that he was getting paid 700 grand a week. But, he's got a great agent, and obviously a very at the time, a very sort of like happy president just to sign him. I think it's interesting, because what I just want you to do now quickly is name me 4 players that you think will go from United in this window. So I'm going to ask 3 of you if you can name the 4 players that you think will just go out on loan, not be sold, but go out on loan. So I'll start with you, Lee. Let's see if we're all the same.
I see Brandon Williams going out on loan. If they can't sell Lingard, they might get him out on loan. Last year of his contract, though. So, but that'd just be to get him off the wage bill. Phil Jones, if they can't sell.
Will anybody take him?
I think you could have an up and coming team in the Premiership that would, or a top Championship team that would take him.
Yeah.
And I think Pereira will go again. I don't see Pereira in United's first team squad.
Okay, Umla?
I'm going to agree with Pereira.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tuanzebe will go back out on loan.
Yep.
I don't see Dalot staying.
Correct.
And it's a toss-up between them, because I'm going to throw one right out there that seems a little bit weird, but Dan James.
Okay, James. Okay. Nigel?
Oh, this is easy.
Still quite young.
Yeah, he's still quite quiet.
This is easy peasy. Phil Jones.
Yep.
Phil Jones. Phil Jones. Phil Jones. I've told you before, the offer still stands. I carry him anywhere on my back. Apparently, I heard that Moyes is interested in him, apparently. So I believe we might actually see him go. But I don't disagree with any of the guys, any of the players that you've all mentioned. What I was going to say this earlier, we keep talking about a midfielder, and there's still not much talk about Van der Beek, and I think he's another quality player that I just felt his game playing was just way beyond the rest of the team, I thought, last year. And I think if we can get the rest of the team thinking on his level, we've cracked it. We may not need to buy, even though I said before that, I think we should get a midfielder. I still watch Van der Beek with interest, because I think he's a great player.
He's a good player. Now, the Camavinga one, I mean, that's an interesting transfer, because Ren, who he's with at the moment, they don't need to sell. To just tell you, just they're a very sort of like financially sound club, and also the family that own it, they're the in-laws of Salma Hayek, so she's married into them. She's married into their family. So, I mean, I think it's quite interesting. I mean, I put together a list of 4 or 5 players that I think is going to go on loan, which I think are Williams, Lingard, Pereira, Tuanzebe, I think Gardner, Levitt, I think they'll go out on loan. I think Gardner, because basically they want him to be around the first team, but when he had his loan period last year at Watford, he didn't get to play. So they want him to get used to playing in front of crowds and the more physical game.
The Red Shirt Podcast, by Reds, for Reds. Don't forget to like, follow and subscribe to the Red Shirt Podcast.